Today, most countries have abolished the death penalty, but a small group of nations still carry out the vast majority of government executions around the world. The leader of these countries executing the most is China. While many countries are open about their capital punishment practices, China is very secretive. They keep their practices buried and hidden in scattered reports, leaked documents, and eyewitness accounts. China themselves don't want us to know the evil design of China's death penalty. 3rd of January 2019. Gao Shengyong is sitting in a cell in the Beiyun detention center. Just 2.5 years ago, he was first arrested. Over the span of 14 years, he killed 11 people, regarded as one of the most notorious serial killers in modern history, known as China's Jack the Ripper.
1988年5月至2002年2月期间，高晨用犯下抢劫、故意杀人、强奸、亵渎尸体等一系列罪行，导致1名女性受害者死亡，其中最小的受害者年仅8岁。
In March 2018, Gao Shengyong was sentenced to death. He is placed into a heavily confined single room. He is given a thin mattress, a stool, a table, and a bucket with water inside. In China, the government keeps many of its death row practices quiet. Prisoners in China are not told the day of their execution until the day comes. Unlike the US, they're told months in advance. Any day they can be taken to an execution center, given no more than a few hours' notice. Unlike many countries that practice the death penalty, China's waiting time from convictions to executions are short, the average wait of 2 months. In the US and many other countries, it's common for death row inmates to be waiting for their executions for years, sometimes even decades. In China, it's rarely longer than a year. Some would argue that this is a good thing, since it means it costs less money from the state to keep them alive for a long time. However, this gives little room for double-checking evidence to avoid false and wrongful convictions. This is what happened to Ni Shubin. He was executed in 1995 for the murder of a 38-year-old woman. However, a decade later, in 2005, another suspect, Wang Shujin, confessed to the crime. He was later put on death row, and in December 2016, the highest court in China overturned Ni's conviction and declared him innocent. In the Beiyun detention center, Gao Shengyong sits in his cell. A prison officer comes in to serve him his last meal of his choice. And on the 3rd of January 2019, he hears more noise than usual outside his cell. In 2025, most nations in the world have outlawed the death penalty, and most people are heavily against it. But in China, it's the opposite. A large-scale national survey of 31,000 Chinese citizens found that about 68% of respondents supported the death penalty, while 32% opposed to it. Support becomes even higher when people are specifically asked about capital punishment for serious crimes like murder, highlighting a widely held belief that certain offences deserve the harshest penalty. However, public support for the death penalty in China has declined significantly over time. Back in 1995, a survey conducted by the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences showed that over 95% of respondents supported capital punishment, with only 5% opposed. This demonstrates a clear downward trend in support over the past few decades. The United States is a more diverse country, with the death penalty having a deep history of racial injustice and equality, which is why many states have outlawed it, with public opinion being more of a polarizing topic among most people, with most Americans disagreeing with the concept of capital punishment. However, China is racially homogeneous with less inequality, making racial injustice and internal biases less common, maybe being a cause of China's overwhelming support from the public on the death penalty. But what makes China particularly interesting about its death penalty is how many people are executed and the secrecy of it all. Estimations show that China's homicide rate is a fraction of the US, with an average of 1 per 100,000 people. This is considered very low globally. The United States homicide rate is 6 per 100,000 people in recent years. These are more countries' homicide rates. As you can see, China's is said to be incredibly low. Yet the number of executions from the death penalty is said to be the highest in the world, with human rights groups estimating 4,000 per year. However, due to the secrecy of the nation, exact numbers are not confirmed. The death penalty is codified under the criminal law of the People's Republic of China. It only applies to serious offences like murder, drug trafficking, corruption and embezzlement, terrorism, severe cases of assault, robbery, and endangerment of public safety. In China, every death sentence must be approved by the Supreme People's Court. Before that, a panel of judges in the lower courts discuss the case and must agree on the punishment together. This review system helps prevent wrongful executions. Confessions, cooperation, or compensating victims can sometimes reduce the sentence. By contrast, in the US, the death penalty is decided by a jury. 4 officers open the door to Gao Shengyong's cell. He is then handcuffed and taken to a van. These are China's mobile execution vans. They are 7 meters long and cloaked in police colors, designed strictly to carry out capital punishment. The exact number of them is considered a state secret, but in 2006 it was 40. That number is said to be a lot higher today. Inside, there's a bed equipped with straps, a medical area, a cabinet, monitoring devices, and CCTV cameras to document the execution. In China, the 2 forms of capital punishment that are legal are lethal injection and firing squad, with firing squad being less used today. Lethal injection is regarded as the cheaper and more humane way of carrying out the death penalty by many. This is what they use in the execution vans. Gao Shengyong is placed on the bed inside the van, and the officers verify his identity as a technician makes sure the drugs are ready. An officer places the needle by his arm and presses the button to trigger the injection. The lethal drugs go straight to the bloodstream, and the criminal is pronounced dead in minutes. A written record of the execution is written, and the body is taken out of the van and cremated. Some would say China's mobile executions is inhumane and too easy. Others would argue its practice should be adopted everywhere around the world since it saves resources and cleanup from using an actual execution ground. China's death penalty practices are considered government secrets. They don't want us to know what happens behind closed doors. While we don't know the exact number of people executed per year, and many exact figures are not public information, China is said to execute more people than anywhere else in the world. Some would say it's inhumane and needs to stop. Others would say it's justice served. I put a lot of time into making these videos all on my own. If you enjoyed it, consider subscribing and checking out one of these videos here. Thanks for watching.